Hello, critics, non-critics, and friends. Welcome to the Film Optix Podcast, where we take a glance into blockbusters, indie films, and everything in between. I'm your host, Christian, and today I'm joined by three guests here. We have Amanda from Candid Cinema / Maude's Book Club, Mike from the Chatter After / Collider, and we have JD Duran from the Insession Film Podcast. And today, we'd like to welcome our listeners to another topical podcast episode as we unravel the impact of streaming in Hollywood, and is streaming ruining the industry as a whole? I don't know. It's a big question, honestly, but this is a topic I've wanted to kind of cover here on the podcast for a while. You know, reviews are our bread and butter when it comes to movie and TV, but we're going through like an experimental phase, trying out some new things, seeing what works. So if you like what you hear, leave us a 5-star rating review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And you can listen to our podcast on podcast platforms around the internet. That includes Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, as I mentioned before. And if you are a new or seasoned listener to the show, we would love to hear from you guys. Follow us on Instagram and follow us on Twitter. And you can now follow us on Threads, which is like Instagram's version of Twitter, at Film Optix, all the same name. That is Optix with an X. Or you can email us at filmoptix@gmail.com for any movie-related questions. So we're going to go around the round table here, catch up, see how everyone has been, because it feels like it's been a while since we've had all these people on, especially JD. It's been a while. I think the last time you came on was for one of our Harry Potter reviews, or no, it was Hunger Games.
Yeah, Hunger Games. Yeah.
That was a good one.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Well, how have you been?
Good. You know, just taking care of two little kiddos. So that's been my thing lately. It was fascinating though, because a few days ago, as you know, it was the 4th of July, obviously, and we took my two sons to their grandma and grandpa's house, and this was Andrew's first 4th of July. And while we were setting off fireworks in the backyard, we set him right in front of this glass door that separated the backyard from the living room. So he could see, but he was sheltered from the noise because we weren't sure how he would handle all the popping and stuff.
Right.
And let me tell you, this little guy was entranced by these fireworks. He absolutely loved it. It was the most adorable thing ever. He was at his little bouncer. Those like things look like that. Just it gives you all the life in the world. So I'm doing well.
Heck yeah, man. That is great to hear. That is all. Yeah. I mean, you got to stimulate the minds as early as you can. Like, that's probably the best way to do it. He's like, look at all these balls of fire in the air.
He loved it. Yeah. Everything exploding. All these lights.
I know, that's crazy. But I'm glad to hear that you're doing well. Have you been watching anything? What have you been watching lately, just in general?
Oh boy, of course, catching up with a little Mission Impossible, getting ready for that. Been watching a lot of Indiana Jones. Two films that I certainly would like to highlight, though, is, I recently caught up with Celine Song's Past Lives. I don't know if you guys have seen this one or not.
I did. I saw it a few days ago.
Been making waves. People are very, very excited for it. So, all I can do is add to the mountain of praise that film has received. I think it's absolutely phenomenal. And, it's interesting because you walk into a movie like that and it has all that hype surrounding it. And it's really well crafted. The performances are excellent. What really took me aback, and I wasn't exactly sure what to expect necessarily. However, we've talked about this countless times on our show over the years, but like two of my favorite thematic ideas to explore in films revolve around childhood in some way. And also this idea of closure, I think, is so vital to the human experience. And Past Lives is a film that covers both of those things. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is a JD special. Like it's everything that I love about movies. So that's certainly one that, hit me pretty hard. And then another film to highlight, because it's not many people have seen it yet, and I haven't seen much discourse around it, but there's an Icelandic film that just dropped on Criterion Channel. But it's a 2023 release. This is a new movie. It's called Godland. And admittedly, it's a film that I'm still processing. However, I think what's fascinating about it is that, it's shot in Iceland, and that area is well known for its landscapes. A lot of movies have used its visuals for, like sci-fi movies and things like that. So, a lot of movies have gone there, but this is a movie where it vividly shows these visuals and just the lushness of Iceland and the evocative, green landscape that it offers. And it's stunning. Like from a visual perspective, it is one of the most breathtaking movies, if not the most breathtaking movie you'll watch this year, just in terms of visuals. However, it's striking to me how the film deconstructs those visuals, thematically speaking, because the film very much goes out of its way to say, hey, all of this beauty you see, it's not exactly what you think it is. And that I find absolutely incredible. So, and there's some commentary, of course, about religion and, a lot of the bad things that can come with that as well. So, it's fascinating. It's a hard film to recommend because one, it's an Icelandic and Danish film. It's also long. It's like 2 hours and 20 minutes, and it is very, very slow. If you are not into methodical cinema, you might want to skip this one. It takes its time, but I'm typically a fan of slow cinema. That's honestly not my issue with it. I'm really more so. My issue is more so it's like character things. I'm still kind of grappling with, but so it's hard to recommend. But I wanted to throw it out there in case anyone listening, might be interested in it. I think it's worth watching at the very least.
Yeah. That's awesome. I'll definitely have to try it out. They're not my favorite films, but I'll try anything at least once. So, Miss Amanda,
hey,
what's up? How you been? What you been watching? What you been reading? What you been playing?
Things. Oh my God, all of those things. I've been reading a lot, which is good. I've been moving on to that now just because I'm with Maude's book club. So I recently just finished Beach Read, which made me cry. And it was the second book this year that made me cry. It was a romance. I cried. So it was good. Emily Henry's awesome. So I'm going to read more of her books. But as you know, I am a diehard Mission Impossible fan. So I have been marathoning them. I watched Dead Reckoning Part 1 tomorrow night. So
Same.
I did it. Yay. Oh my God.
So jealous.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Oh, we already went through that, Christian. This is how tired I am because I just edited like 3 videos today. But yeah, it was something really cool on my channel. Since like July 1st, I put out a review for every single Mission Impossible. So my MI7 review will come out on Friday, and it's been a week of just Mission Impossible on the channel. So that was a lot of fun. I love those movies, and I hope everyone loves them as much as I do because it's the best franchise. Controversial. There we go. All right. Next up.
We'll save that for another episode.
But yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm gonna catch up on sleep after this weekend. I have the Beyonce concert on Saturday, so
Oh wow.
party time. Yeah, I'm excited.
My gosh.
It's gonna be good.
Well, I'm glad you're doing dandy. Mr.
Thanks.
Mike, how you been, buddy? What's going on in your life?
Exhausted, but I'm here binging Mission Impossible. Amanda's right, greatest franchise of all time. Christian, you gotta just understand it. But I've been binge watching a lot of my adventures with Superman. The review just went up on collider.com. It's a fantastic show. Superman fans are doing very well, aside from that one hiccup a few months back that kind of ripped our hearts out of our chest. But, we're doing good. So, yeah, just working on reviews for Collider. We just did Bahubali for The Chatter After, which is an Indian film on Netflix that you can check out. It's a two-parter, the beginning and the conclusion. We just uploaded our review for the beginning, and then the conclusion will be next week. And on the Amateur Otaku, we were talking all of the anime coming out this summer. Jujutsu Kaisen starts this weekend, and Zom 100 Bucket List of the Dead, which is looking to be a crazy show. We're going to be covering that too.
Nice. Well, it sounds you guys are all doing fantastic. I myself have been watching the Mission Impossible movies.
Yeah. Wait. You have to say for the first time ever. You can't just say
people don't have to know that. No, I'm kidding.
Well, now they do.
Yeah.
You need credibility here, Christian.
That's true. Yeah. So actually, my first Mission Impossible movie was Fallout. When we first started the show, we were going to cover it, and then we just didn't for some reason. But that was technically my first one ever. I was like, "Oh, this is pretty good." I mean,
Cavill loads his arms like a gun. How did you not cover that movie?
They took out the. I was like, "No,
I can't even do it."
It was great.
I tried.
Yeah, but I've gone through every other Mission Impossible movie for the first time, and it's very enjoyable. I do have my favorites in that franchise. I wouldn't go so far as to say it's the best franchise, but I'm seeing Dead Reckoning tomorrow night as well. Amanda,
which one was your favorite?
Oh, Rogue Nation, 100%.
It is good.
It's so good. Mission Impossible 3, Chef's Kiss. Absolute. It was amazing.
Sure.
That's my favorite.
I'm so sorry.
Three is my favorite.
I'm just not a fan of the second Mission Impossible movie, at all. I was like, this is like Matrix meets Spy Kids meets everything else.
All of those things are amazing. What's wrong?
I know. I don't know.
By themselves, you praise them, but mashed together, it's a no. That doesn't make sense.
Too much was going on. I mean, but it was fine. It's just out of the other Mission Impossible movies, there were better options out there. But yeah, least favorite is number 2. Rogue Nation is definitely my favorite, 100%. So
yeah,
that's been a lot of fun. I watched Nimona today, and I absolutely fell in love with that movie. I was didn't know anything about it. I just heard that it was out, and I was like, yeah, let's try this out. And I was just enthralled. So I was like, wow. And I watched a movie that you cannot find on Disney Plus anymore. Crater.
What a segue.
Through other means I will not reveal here on the show, but
you're going to be king of the pirates, just like Luffy.
Yeah, let's go Jack Sparrowing.
Exactly, which I feel like that kind of ties into everything that we're going to be talking about here today, which brings me actually to our first segment, which is exploring the rise of streaming, which is essentially the growth and popularity of streaming services such as Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney Plus and whatnot. Kind of wanted us to take a second to kind of analyze how the streaming platforms have disrupted the traditional models and provided new opportunities for content creators, because obviously streaming is not all bad. But, you have your pros and cons, but wanted to get your guys' thoughts on this first segment. So we'll start with Mike, then we'll go to JD, and then we'll end with Amanda.
Yeah. So segment number 1, you said, was exploring the rise of streaming. So I kind of want to just go back a little bit and see where this thread goes to, how far back it goes, right? Topical.
Very topical.
But streaming began in 2007 with Netflix finally launching their streaming app 10 years after their DVD service took off. But it actually goes back. I want to go back a little further to YouTube in 2005 because that's the first time any of us were able to just go watch a video at will online, share it, save it, revisit it, whatever you want. The video is always going to be there on your computer and on your phone. If you had that first generation iPhone at the time, way back in the early days, the ancient times, I think that's important because Netflix, in its inception, it was basically just Blockbuster in your house. Like everything was going to Netflix. There was no other streaming services. Disney specifically held out a long time before they started putting their content on Netflix. And I think that was very important in those early days, because while there was a lot of content there, you still had to go to the theater. You still had to buy physical media to experience everything you wanted. And as we kind of move across the timeline, you see that change when House of Cards comes out in 2013, the first Netflix original. And that's when things start to get a little murky. You know, the writer's strike was in 2008. So here in 2023, they're kind of fighting against a decade of issues they've had with the rise of streaming, because that wasn't a part of their last, strike and their negotiations in 2008. So House of Cards exists, and we have that problem of everything is in the palm of your hand. And Netflix has spent 7 years allowing you to binge watch The Office 24/7 on their platform. So they say, hey, that's how our audience is trained. We're going to just let them watch the entire show as soon as it comes out. And binge model has been with Netflix ever since then. We can talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, I think the rise of popularity with the streaming services, with YouTube, and again, this is going back almost 20 years now, has trained a generation of moviegoers that, hey, if you want to watch something, you can just easily access it at home. You don't have to go out to the theater. It'll be there for you. And the pandemic just kind of accelerated all of that stuff too.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. But JD, what are your thoughts on this first segment?
Well, it's interesting because, we've been doing Insession Film for 10 years. And over that time, I think, at least for me, it's been pretty easy to conflate a lot of the streaming stuff that we see all the time. So trying to separate my memory from what's happening now to, let's say, pre-2018 has been a little bit of a challenge. However, it's interesting because I didn't really delve into Netflix in any sort of way until we started doing the show. I never really did the DVD service or any of their streaming stuff till 2013. So it's hard for me to really speak to what the service was pre that. However, it's interesting, I guess, the evolution of those first few years, though, because, obviously like in 2013, 14, and most of 2015, everything was pretty much status quo. You had to go to the theater. You would wait 6 months to see, these movies come out on Blu-ray or whatever. And then in 2015, and I don't know about the Netflix TV stuff. That may have started a little bit earlier, but I don't really watch a lot of TV, so you have to forgive me there. But on the film side of things, their first movie is Beast of No Nation in October of 2015, and that comes out, and it's interesting because at the time I wasn't sure what to expect. It's like, okay, we're getting this movie from a filmmaker that we're aware of. It stars Idris Elba in it. And I get to watch this, on Netflix. I don't have to go to a theater. It was a little jarring at the time, but that movie comes out and it is freaking incredible. I still maintain Beast of No Nation, and I know they've had some heavy hitters since then. I still think it's one of their best original films. I don't know where it would rank, but it's absolutely one of their best movies. And so I'm like, man, if this is the kind of stuff that's going to come out on Netflix all the time, I mean, we're in for a treat, and this is absolutely going to change things. Now, a lot of the content that came out since then certainly doesn't quite live up to that. And the quality has been, we'll say, uneven to say the least. But it's interesting to, going back to that time and looking at the stuff that they were putting out, and even the movies that weren't always great. I mean, they still had some really interesting stuff come out in those first few years with some high profile actors, even some fascinating directors. And I early on, I think the notion that really stuck with me was, Netflix is letting these directors do what they want. And it seems as if their hands aren't quite as tight as it was with the studio system, for better or worse. And that even still might be the case a little bit now, but, that was at least interesting. And so like from an approach perspective, I wasn't necessarily hard pressed with what Netflix was doing. I think the conflict comes with stuff that we'll get into later in terms of audience behavior and industry impact and all that sort of stuff. But as far as the rise of Netflix, from the production side, there were some good things happening, and also the convenience of it as well, I think, is an interesting topic of conversation as we go forward here as well. Because I will always champion the theater. Beast of No Nation is a movie that I would have loved to have seen in theaters, but I also understand the appeal of something like a Netflix and what the streaming that we have now, especially as a father of two. As much as I would love to go to the theaters every single day if I could, the reality is I can't. Without streaming, I don't get a chance to see nearly as many movies as I would like to. So that duality will, I think, be a focal point of this conversation going forward. But that's kind of where I come from in a nutshell.
Okay. Amanda, what about you?
Yeah, I'm always like, I feel like not ahead of the curve, but whenever something new is out, clearly, since we all jumped on Threads, like immediately, we're all in the same boat here.
It's because we're shills.
We're shills, and we're just like, it's new, yay, okay. So I think for me, like with Netflix, I thought the one thing that worked for me for streaming is that you had all of these shows like The Office, like we had mentioned, that were on there. Like I remember I stopped watching Gossip Girl on the CW, I think season like 3 or 4, and I never finished it. And then watching, like Netflix had it on in their library, and I'm like, oh, awesome, I get to go back and watch it. So I think the first main draw is that they had familiar television shows that people either didn't catch on cable or they didn't have access to it on cable, and they'd watch it. So I think the accessibility there for Netflix worldwide basically was something unique, because you can't even find certain TV shows in syndication on cable anymore. And that's really sad. So now, which we'll get into it afterwards, is the fact that like you could have had maybe, I don't know, the Brady Bunch on Netflix for a bit, something that old and dated could have been on there. You know, you have these older television series that aren't on syndication on cable, like Friends and, the Fresh Prince. They all have like a special place on designated platforms. So that was the main draw for me. I'm like, I can finish all these shows that like I never got a chance to watch on cable. And that made me really happy. So that was a place to start. So I think for me, once they started doing original shows, I wasn't a House of Cards fan, but boy, when Orange is the New Black was on that platform, I was like, oh my God, I was hooked. So I was watching that. And then that's when it kind of started forming where you could do original shows, but I think now it's gotten to a point where it's overkill, and they don't really pay that close attention to what they're putting out there. No offense to Netflix, but that's what we're currently living in. So what started out as like a nice idea for like other television series to get a platform for it, that's not what we're in right now, unfortunately. So it's really cool to see where it started and like why I started subscribing to Netflix and how streaming platforms have evolved from that one little idea of having their own series and projects that they had created, and how it just exploded. So that's my journey with Netflix.
Yeah, no, that's all. Those are great answers. You guys all hit on like probably like the best points like ever. For mine, I'll make mine super brief. I guess, because we're talking about Netflix because obviously that is like the granddaddy of streaming. Love them or hate them. It's I
mean, we're talking about the rise of streaming. It all goes back to Netflix, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I never used Netflix's DVD service, but I mean, I've been
so
subscribed to. Well, we were more of like a Redbox family after Blockbuster went on.
Christian, I will tell you, I finished Avatar: The Last Airbender through the DVD service.
That's right. You did tell me that. I forgot about that. Yeah.
I love it.
Dedication.
Oh, wow.
It was so like I got to Sozin's comment and it was on 2 separate discs, and I had to wait like a week for the next disc to come. It was torture.
Stop. Oh my God. That's terrible. Oh no.
Wow.
But so yeah, we after Blockbuster went under, we used Redbox for a while, and like I mean Redbox is still around, as like another like DVD or like Blu-ray like renting service. But yeah, we never used Netflix's DVD service, but I've been subscribed to Netflix for, honestly, I can't even tell you when I signed up, because I've like unsubscribed and resubscribed a few times, like in the early days. But I remember, when Trailer Park Boys and Orange is the New Black was out, like those are 2 like really big heavy shows, especially Orange is the New Black. That's really what I remember when Netflix was starting to like, take off. Like I always feel like Netflix's bread and butter is their TV. Since then, obviously we've had a lot of films. I remember Beast of No Nation very vaguely, what JD had mentioned, but I would definitely have to go back and rewatch it. But I also remember, like, we all remember like the Bird Box craze as well. So that was, but yeah, I don't know. Back to what Amanda was saying, like, it wasn't really even about like the originals during the beginning. It was about, what else can I watch on here? Like The Office was on there for ages. And then, that eventually got removed. Then we get like Parks and Rec, that 70s show, and like all these other like big name TV shows. But I think when I really started taking Netflix more seriously is when they started integrating it into game consoles. I remember when it came to Xbox, because it was, annoying.
It was on my Wii.
Yeah, like it was on Nintendo Wii, PlayStation 3, and Xbox 360.
I remember that, yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, like I could play video games and watch movies and TV shows all on the same box. And it changed everything. I remember at the time there was like an article where, at least for Xbox, it was at least 50% of viewers were people who owned an Xbox were using it. They were spending 50% of their time watching movies and TV shows and then playing video games. But yeah, Netflix kind of just blew up altogether. And I've had it for so long. I'm like, I don't even want to know what like the general total is up to this point I've given this company. But I've also found it weird, especially during college. They never really had like a college program for kids or, for college students when it came to streaming.
Yeah.
But I guess it was so cheap back then. What? It used to be $8.99, $7.99 a month.
$9 or something. Yeah.
Now it's like $20 to stream in 4K.
I cannot believe it.
Yeah.
It went up that much, but yeah.
It's insane. But yeah, I mean, the rise of streaming, it's affected a lot. And I mean, it opens up so many new doors, but I was like, oh, this is really cool. And then, it kind of just goes from there. So we'll just jump straight into the second segment, which is more.
Before we do, I just want to shout out Hulu for being a real one. It's been around since 2008 for some reason, and I don't think anybody knew that.
That's interesting. I didn't know that. Damn.
That is right. That. Yeah, because I mean, Netflix, and then we had Hulu and Netflix. I remember they were like really the only 2 streaming services we had. Yep. And then everything else kind of started trickling through. Like Mike said, Disney came in to the game super late. So it's like, once we found out that we can start watching movies, like not TV shows, but movies at home, it really changed a lot of things. Especially with JD, he would love to go to the theater, like he said, but it's like, that's pretty costly, especially if you have children. And movie tickets are not really getting cheaper by any means necessary. So
that's a big part of it. I mean, honestly, like if I take my wife and son to the theater, we're spending $60 easy every time. And now I have 2. So when Andrew gets older, I can't even imagine how much more that's going to be. I mean, families just can't, they're not going.
They
often.
Cannot keep up.
And they're saving their money up for, what they consider to be the bigger important films, which is why the studio's hands become a little bit tied. Like, I know we're all sick and tired of it being nothing but IP, but that's what people have decided they're going to see. And in big part, it's how expensive it is. And you couple that with how accessible home theater systems are. On my couch and my 90-inch TV and my surround sound, like, people can afford that now. Yeah. And so putting on Netflix at home is just that much more attainable than going to the theater all that often. So, I understand the appeal. I will fight for cinema all day long, but I mean, there's so many factors at play. And as we've seen over the last, 10, 15 years, a lot of the films that would go to theaters are now just going straight to Netflix.
Yeah. That is very true.
That's where we're at.
Yeah. Yep. And that actually kind of segues into our next segment, which is like changing viewer habits, which is kind of examining how streaming has influenced audience behavior, such as binge. You okay?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh God, like, this is an intense one. That's all I'm saying.
Hey, man, is there something you want to share with the class?
It's extensive. We're going to be here for a minute.
It's like, it's a lot. Yeah.
We'll try to get through as fast as I promise. But the changing viewer habits, just examining how streaming has influenced audience behavior, such as binge watching and just, the personalized content consumption. So kind of like the impact of streaming on the cinema experience, which we kind of already started talking about, especially with JD was saying, you can effectively, for a pretty penny here or there, depending on what sound system you want, you can effectively create your own home theater, in the comfort of your own home and watch whatever you want, so to speak. Everything comes to Max eventually, but
they're still not going to give you anything if you plug it.
That is a love-hate relationship. But their home theater team is so nice. Like, out of any team I've worked with, they are the best. But
that's fantastic. Home theater team, hit me up. You send me nothing.
Warner Brothers, yay!
That's true, though. The home theater team, I have to admit, I don't reach out as often, but they were the ones that were so consistent.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. More consistent than Max. So it's like, it is what it is. But let's get into the changing viewer habits of, the influencers out there, the audience behavior. We see so much of it on social media. Sometimes we got to step away for a while. So let's start off with Amanda, then we'll go to JD and then Mike on this segment.
Oh, you know me. What did I tell you from before? I said, Christian, you have to keep asking me what TV show I'm watching.
How many TV shows have you watched?
I can't tell you. I stopped watching television. I'm serious. Like, it was really hard for me to keep track. I think now, especially with this, I have to binge watch a series in a day or else I will not go back to it, which is terrible. I have to sit there for 8 to 10 hours. I can sit through The Irishman. I can do anything. We're at that point.
Clearly.
Hey, that's Scorsese.
You know what I'm saying? People can hate on that. It was fun. But for me, it's like, I can't go back to it. I can't do weekly episodes. I think even with Disney Plus, especially the Marvel series, it's really hard for me to, want to get back into it and watch it every single week. So I think that it depends on the series and if it can draw people on a weekly basis, but it's like really hard for TV now for me personally that I just cannot go back and watch something if I stopped watching it. Like, I still haven't finished Community. I know. I am so sorry, Christian. I'm sorry. I'm literally on the last season with 3 episodes left to binge and I can't do it. Okay. Like, I don't even want to go back to it. I have no idea. So that's that. But in regards to the cinematic experience, I think, especially with lockdown that had happened, like the pandemic that had happened, that changed a lot of things in regard to accessibility for people. And it was much safer for everyone to sit at home to watch movies. And that is what ended up happening. So I think that, like, even with my parents, I dragged them to go see Top Gun Maverick. I took my dad to go see Elvis. My parents don't go to the movie theaters anymore. So they just stay at home and watch like whatever's on the platform. We have our home theater that we've made, but there are a lot of people that just don't go. And like what JD was saying with having a family, you know, it's like very pricey here in Canada. It's like $100 for a family of 4 to do like popcorn and tickets. And like, that's like AVX 3D. It's insane. I'm like, so $100 to go out on a Saturday night, whatever's out, or am I going to subscribe to a streaming service and then get X amount of content, even if it's like good or bad or whatever, you're still sitting there as a family unit. And I think that's what's beneficial as well. So it comes down to the pricing for that too. It doesn't matter. I think the production value at this point, people just want new programming to be able to share with, you know, your loved ones and, your girlfriends, your boyfriends and stuff like that. So I think that there's a lot of factors, but it changed drastically for me depending on what I'm going to go watch in the theater and what I'm going to watch at home or what I'm going to catch at home. So I think that changes for everybody. And I think that's also changed for like, there's comedies, there's dramas that you'd rather watch on a streaming platform and not in the theater. And we talked about IPs as well, where like that's the main draw now. So it's a lot of factors. I rambled on, but long story short, I can only watch a binge sesh in one day to finish a series. And that's what Netflix has done to me. So thanks, Netflix. Appreciate it. Cause I can't go back to episodes. Yeah.
I mean, I knew you were busy, but you're like, like the only way I can watch TV is if I binge it in like one day.
Yeah.
Like I will only do that for one show, and that is Stranger Things.
Yeah. I do the same.
Yeah.
But that's just me. Cause I love the series so much, but let's move over to JD and get his thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of spilled the beans a little bit with how I feel about this, but it's interesting because I noted how expensive it is to take my family. The other factor in that, we're paying $60. Other families with more kids are in that $80 to $100 range. That's also for one experience, for one movie. Whereas if I'm streaming Into the Spider-Verse, or recently the movie that we've been playing a lot at home is Avatar: The Way of Water. God knows how many times I've seen that film now. But we can watch that whenever we want, as many times as we want. And that's the other thing with streaming is that you're paying the monthly fee, whatever it is, $15, $20. And even if you're doing that for multiple streamers, it's still cheaper than going to the theater one time. And I get to see these movies over and over again. And we've conditioned audiences over the years for that level of comfort. And I think two ramifications that have come about is, one, the theaters have started to pander to that home viewing experience. So instead of the conventional seating, it's now the recliners. It's the keeping up with the Joneses to try to outdo the comfort of your own home, which that in and of itself is interesting. I don't know if this is the same where you guys are, but at least here in Florida, the audiences have matched that comfort by showing up in, we'll say, comfort clothes. People just go to the theaters in their pajamas and they bring blankets and pillows, and like that's the viewing experience these days. So that's one ramification. The other thing too is, a lot of people just aren't going, and we are certainly seeing this with all the studios, but most recently, I think the ones that have hit the hardest for me is with Pixar. Because Elemental and Lightyear both underperformed drastically comparatively to what it was right before COVID hit. And just for some context, the last Pixar film to come out right before COVID was Toy Story 4. Now that's a bigger franchise, but that does $1 billion. Incredibles 2 does $1.2 billion. If you want to look at something like Coco and Inside Out, both of those are in the $800 million range. So like Pixar has always done very, very well. And then COVID comes, and then we start releasing these movies like straight to Disney Plus. So now when we're on the other side of it, and they're expecting these movies to come to Disney Plus, and again, you couple that with the comfort of my own home and the theater costs and everything else we've talked about, and these last two Pixar movies have drastically underperformed. And I think it's a simple result of Hollywood conditioning audiences that they might as well just wait for this to come out on Disney Plus, because it's going to come in theaters and they don't have to wait the 6 to 8 months anymore. Yeah. It's coming out in 2 months. And that's what happens, and it certainly doesn't help. And I love this film, Luca, for me, and I will fight for it. I think that's a top tier Pixar movie. I think it's great.
Yeah.
Regardless of how you feel about its quality, it was a huge hit on Disney Plus. It was massive.
Yeah.
And so now, and Turning Red, I think also went straight to Disney Plus as well. Mm-hmm. So now, people are just expecting these movies to come sooner rather than later. And now that's what they're waiting for. And I think that translates, perhaps the scale isn't quite the same, but I think it's probably why, the superhero films have been underperforming recently. Indiana Jones underperforms recently, and really a lot of the films have underperformed recently. So there's certainly a conversation to be had about quality and why that may matter now in a post-COVID world. Maybe we can get to that here in a little bit, but as far as audience behavior goes, I think on the whole, we've just conditioned audiences to simply wait it out. And it's a little worrisome, if you ask me.
Yeah. Mike, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think Amanda and JD hit it right on the head. Just going back to the cost of this, right? Like, I took my family to go see Avatar: The Way of Water last year. We decided to make it a night out, so we went to the theater. There's a pizzeria connected to the theater, so we saw it in IMAX. It was a great time. It was $130. It was $130.
Stop this.
Including the food and the tickets. It was insane.
You're joking.
130.
I wish I was. My wallet wishes I was joking.
Oh my God.
So
when Mike said he took his family, I was like, oh, did he drive? Okay, so he paid. I was like,
yeah,
what?
I paid. And, we had a great time, saw it in IMAX. It was a beautiful movie, great movie. It goes to Disney Plus, and it's like, in hindsight, we could just waited a couple of months, bought a pizza here for $20, and we're good.
Saved $100.
Yeah, fam. Like,
it's on two platforms.
Yeah. So that is definitely why, we're seeing a big change in behavior. And the pandemic, that definitely had a huge impact. I think it just accelerated what was going to happen anyway.
Yeah, I agree. Wholly agree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you look at, and I mentioned Disney when we were talking about like the beginnings of streaming. Disney like legitimately held out. They didn't start putting like their Pixar and Marvel stuff on Netflix until like 2017-ish. Mm-hmm. And that was just to hold them somewhere until they go to Disney Plus. As soon as Disney Plus exists, you now see like even the Marvel movies don't do as well because everybody knows, hey, I can just wait it out. Yep. And that, I think that just shows again the changes in behavior, because since those Marvel movies, since those big IP, those franchise films weren't on streaming for the 2010s, they were consistently making $1 billion because that was the only way to see them without the spoilers. Like Thanos snapping half the universe out of existence was on Twitter like the day it happened.
True. Yeah. Oh my God. It's terrible.
Avoiding it. Yeah.
So I think once Disney Plus specifically happened, and then all the other platforms were like cannibalizing each other, trying to grab IP, starting their own thing.
Yeah.
It really blew off with the pandemic because we had no choice but to stay home. And then HBO Max said, we're going to put everything on here day and date. And now that becomes an issue because the entire audience is like, I don't have to spend $130 to go watch a movie like Mike did. I can just wait. Wait a couple months. Like Guardians of the Galaxy is gonna be on streaming in like 3 days right now.
That's right. Yeah.
And that's the interesting thing about that too, is even if you're not willing to wait for it to be fully streaming. Yeah. But it comes to something like Amazon Prime, because a lot of these films will come like 2 months, maybe less than that, after its initial release in theaters, and then you can rent them at home for $20.
That's still a better deal.
Admittedly, I do that all the time because I can't get to the theaters every single weekend. Yeah. And that's much cheaper than the $60. So, that's a direct result of COVID. Yeah. We had many conversations about the industry leading to that eventually, but I thought it would be like in another 20 years. And then COVID's like, nope, we're experimenting now. We're going right into this. Yeah. And it just never went away. And now it's just part of our lives now.
It's just, you have to think about it. Like, how was the industry working pre-streamers, right? Disney had something that we all remember, the Disney Vault, where they would just put movies away for years. And when they brought them back out, everybody rushed to buy them, rushed to see them, because they didn't know when they could see them again. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But Disney unlocked the vault with Disney Plus, and everything is just there for $10 a month now. And all the new stuff will be there in a couple months. So I think we're also seeing the audience be even more selective than they were originally. Right. Because we were saying in the 2010s, all the audience cares about are Marvel movies. Well, now in the 2020s, we noticed that that's not the case. The audience cares about Spider-Man and Guardians of the Galaxy. Like Ant-Man and Shazam and Flash aren't doing well. Just because they're superhero movies doesn't mean they're doing well. They're being even more selective on what they want to see. And those are the familiar characters that they were watching, over the last several years.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, again, you guys have all made really great points. I kind of wanted to touch on, but I think it was either Amanda or Mike had mentioned the great WB 2020 COVID. Like, I like to call it the best thing that ever happened to consumers. Like, it was so pro-consumer during 2020. It was shifty how they, did it all together. Very, very shifty how, Warner Brothers is like, hey, surprise, we're going to do like this dual release where all of our 2020 movies are going to hit HBO Max for 30 days only, and then they'll be in theaters for the remainder of the time. But it was like they launched simultaneously. So once we saw like the Suicide Squad, it was hitting theaters and HBO Max, RIP, at the same time. And then after 30 days, it would be removed from HBO Max. You can only see it in theaters. Like, it was terrible for the industry, but my God, I did love it for consumers, because I could just be like, oh my gosh, there are some WB movies I was like, well, I want to watch them, but I don't necessarily feel like putting in the effort to go to the movie theater, like Reminiscence, I think it was, and The Little Things. I was like, those movies were terrible. I was like, I can just watch this at home. If I'm not feeling it, I can just turn it off and move on with my day. But I think it was a really bad thing for Warner Brothers, because that has snowballed into so much more.
I know
that we don't even have time to talk about when it comes to like home theater release, like home entertainment and whatnot for certain things, like Succession, one of like their best shows. It's getting a physical release, but it's DVD only. They're not even doing like a full Blu-ray complete series. And I was like, that's odd. But as I digress, when it comes to streaming behavior, I mean, I remember, just as much as anyone else, everyone's trying to figure out what to cover during the year of 2020 outside of Warner Brothers, like content. People were rewatching Contagion because, sure, let's rewatch Contagion because it's like the thing to do right now. I remember like watching like Spencer Confidential. There were so many things that I remember us at least doing on the show. We're like, okay, like there were some times we had to buy movies on VOD. There was a lot of movies that were like, hey, this is the way that we have to watch this. And I do agree. It's everything just got sped up, and it was jarring, but I was like, I kind of like it. But now looking back on it, I'm like, was it necessarily the right thing? But at the same time, it's like, what else was Hollywood going to do? No one could go to the theaters. And, the audience behavior, it's like, Mike said he spent $130. I mean, Hollywood needs to figure out a way for movie theaters to survive in today's world. Because obviously, you get the gourmet food, you get the cushy seats, like JD was saying, people are rolling up with like blankets and pillows. I'm like, that sounds amazing.
My theater encourages it. Like the promo before the movie says, hey, you can bring your blanket, right? We can wear your PJs. You don't care, this is your living room now. It's like, oh,
exactly.
Sure.
For the next like 2.5 hours. But yeah, there's so many factors. And obviously, the economy, no matter where you live, can be a huge factor as well when it comes to like cost of living and whatnot. But again, that's a conversation for another day. But yeah, it's sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, as far as my own viewing habits, the pandemic, again, it changed everything. Like, I was the person who every week I'm going to see 1-2 movies. I had my AMC A list. So, like, I'm just at the theater multiple times a week. But then I had to avoid movie theaters for like 2 years. And so I myself am not even at the theater that much. One, because it costs too much. Even like
unless it's Spider-Man.
Unless it's Spider-Man. Well, you see, we saw Spider-Man like 3 times because Spider-Man. Yes. That's my point.
Yeah,
that's true.
Spider-Man puts butts in seats. That's what we've learned from the pandemic.
J. Jonah Jameson's been saying that since the 60s, dude.
Yeah.
Like even my own viewing habits, like being a hardcore fan of this stuff, I even stopped going and just said, I'll just wait till it goes to Netflix. It's fine. Especially if you guys are talking about movies and say, hey, Shazam 2 sucks. I haven't seen Shazam 2 to this day. It's on Max. I still haven't watched it yet because I just don't have time to waste money.
You don't need to.
Fine.
But it's also with time. It's like, do people have time to go to the movies anymore?
The time and the money.
Don't. Yeah. And like what Amanda said, the only way that she can watch a TV show, not even a movie, a TV show, is if she binges it in one day. Not everyone can do that. And it's
imagine paying the $130 I did and not liking the movie.
I would have cried.
That's the other thing.
I would have been like, can you please give me a refund? I'm begging you to give me a refund at that point. Like, oh, God.
I would hope for like Mr. Krabs to like come in and like what he did while he was trying to like cut costs, and he like somehow rewinded what this one like dude was watching, literally removed from his eyeballs back to the screen. I'm like, I need that to happen. I need to forget this entire experience, and I need the money to go back into my bank account.
Well, and I think there's a conversation to be had. I briefly mentioned this earlier.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be so curious to see what these next few years look like. But because of everything we're talking about, the cost and the risk, as you're talking about there, I think quality in a post-COVID world will matter a lot. Previously, it was less of a concern because there were awful movies that made lots of money all the time. But when you look at the highest grossing movies since COVID, it's Avatar: The Way of Water, it's Top Gun Maverick, it's these movies that are really well crafted, that everyone can enjoy in some way, shape, or form. Of course, Spider-Man, No Way Home does very well. That's another one in that. But that's obviously one of the MCU's best in Phase 4. And then you have a Jurassic World Dominion in there as well, just to kind of give the other side of that spectrum. But I do wonder, especially this year, because we noted earlier there's been a lot of movies to underperform, and the reception for them weren't super high either. When we get to this month with Mission Impossible, and you have Barbie and Oppenheimer, if those films also start to underperform, I think we need to have a deeper conversation about this as far as what things could look like going forward, because it might get dire. But if those films exceed expectations, and assuming that they are good, let's just, for the sake of argument, that You know, they're really well made. They're really great, and they do well. Then you can throw that into the mix with some of these others that are in that same boat. And I kind of wonder if they're not just saving their money for a certain thing, but they're being extra picky to be like, I don't want to spend $100 for something that I might like.
Right.
This looks really good. It's getting great reviews. This is the thing I'm going to spend my money on. And also I might go back and see it again if it's that good. So I do think now more than ever, quality might be a big thing going forward.
Yeah, I definitely agree. You guys have all made some amazing points. Let's move on to the third segment really quick. We don't spend too much time on this. This is mainly the creative freedom when it comes to like original content, kind of like examining how streaming platforms have encouraged the production of diverse and original content, which we've definitely seen a lot of. But unfortunately, a lot of those have just mysteriously disappeared from streaming services.
Mysteriously.
Tragic.
Movies or series like Willow or Crater that are on Disney Plus. Not even that, Westworld, which was going into its final season and got removed from the formerly known HBO Max due to tax write-offs, and other movies, you know, that we were supposed to get, like Batgirl and Scooby-Doo Holiday Haunt, which were like effectively 90% done. So I feel like there's a lot of potential like creative constraints. Sometimes there's opportunities, but I want to kind of talk about that a little bit. Mike, we'll start with you, then go to JD, and then Amanda. I just want to get your guys' thoughts on that segment really quick.
Yeah, as far as creative freedom, a lot of creators got the opportunity to start telling their stories in ways that weren't always there. We also got to see, like, going back to The Irishman, we kind of briefly just mentioned that movie. Martin Scorsese got to make a 4-hour epic. Like, he just got to do his thing, whether you liked it or not.
Epic. No, I'm kidding.
It counts as an epic, whether you think it's epic or not.
I'm just trying to push him in his buttons there.
I have the posters hanging in my room, Christian. Can't do it in front of them.
I can barely see it.
There it is.
All the way back in that corner over there. Okay.
The audio listeners have no idea what's going on. But yeah, like, it was, people got to get more experimental. We got to see more unique types of shows. We got to see them take advantage of the binge model, right? Like Stranger Things just said, we're going to make a movie. We're going to make a movie every season, except for season 2, where we had that random extra episode. But, you know, like, I think it's done a great service to the industry as a whole, but there's a lot of caveats there. Like, you know, writers' rooms are completely different. They have mini rooms now, and like, it's no longer, and I wanted to talk about this because I mentioned YouTube when we were talking about the evolution of all of this. Netflix follows the YouTube model more than it does the traditional studio model, where, you know, Warner Brothers, Disney, Sony, Lionsgate, all those other studios, they were making films, they were making movies. Netflix, like YouTube, thrives on content. And they specifically say
the algorithm,
content and the algorithm. Exactly. So it's like, they need to keep you on the platform for as long as possible.
Yeah.
Whatever it takes. If that means throwing Gal Gadot, The Rock, and Ryan Reynolds in a movie, they're going to do it, whether if it makes sense or not. So, you know, that's kind of like the ebb and flow of it. Like, we got a lot of cool stuff. I don't think Stranger Things exists without Netflix. I don't think that show can exist on another platform or network. But you also get a lot of things like Red Notice, you know, and that's the push and pull when it comes to streamers. And that's why it's interesting seeing some of the studios get into the streaming game, right? Because Disney doesn't make a lot of original content because their focus is still on their movies. And then when we do get original content, Marvel and Star Wars don't know how to make shows, so they're just kind of making movies and slicing them up, you know? So like, seeing the entire evolution of all this is fascinating. Then you have Max, who just like, they had HBO and then they said, yeah, that's a lot. We don't know if we're getting the revenue we need from shows like Last of Us and Succession, even though they're great. So we're going to go a bit more into reality TV and start trying to muddy up the brand a little bit because they don't know what to do. So yeah, there's a lot of creative freedom. There's a lot of great original content. But again, we went from art to content, and that's where it gets very messy.
Yeah. JD, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I will echo a lot of those thoughts. I mean, it's a big duality. I mean, I've talked about the convenience of it, which I do appreciate. You know, I will echo Mike and how, you know, we get a lot of filmmakers on there that get to make the movies they want to make, and with perhaps a little less red tape than they would if they were working in the traditional Hollywood system. You know, for better or worse, but, you know, we get to see some interesting choices made. And I do like a lot of the big swings these filmmakers take, even if it doesn't always work. I very much do appreciate that. And we've seen, you know, some big time filmmakers make movies for Netflix and for streamers. And part of that is born out of perhaps the less red tape, but it's also Hollywood is so focused on the IP front that the $50 million movie isn't made anymore. So if Noah Baumbach wants to make a movie, he's going to Netflix now. And I've really liked the movies he's made for Netflix. Same thing with Scorsese. You know, so like for all of the algorithm and content that Netflix and these streamers do make, which is mostly awful, you know, I do appreciate that they are giving these auteurs their space to create, and the art that is born out of it, I do think is more times it's excellent than it isn't. And just generally, broadly speaking, I do like that they're willing to take on these $50 million movies, whether they be drama or comedies, like the middling comedy. Like I'm rooting hard for the new Jennifer Lawrence movie to do well, because like those just don't go to theaters at all anymore, you know, or Joyride coming out soon. Like I want those movies to do well so we get more of them, because they're a dying breed. But at least the Netflixes of the world are willing to take them on, and so I do appreciate that, and perhaps that leads to the biggest talking point for me in this arena, and that's film preservation. I am deadly afraid of what that is going to look like in the next decade or so, especially when Disney or Netflix or Warner Brothers, whoever it is, when they just feel the need to take these films away from these digital platforms whenever they feel like it, for whatever reason. And who knows if we'll ever get it back. And because digital media is so gigantic, physical media is becoming less and less of a commodity. It's harder to find a lot of these things physically. And that means we are reliant on these streamers to preserve these movies. And they are not doing a great job of that. And a lot of that also circles back to newer releases in terms of like classic movies and older films. It is already a nightmare. I mean, you go on to any platform, and unless you're searching these films up and your algorithm is tapped into that, it is really hard to find older films and classic movies. Mm-hmm. And HBO or HBO Max, RIP, Max has an incredible catalog of classic movies. Mm-hmm. Amazon Prime has a phenomenal catalog as well. But if you just go to the homepage of those streamers, impossible to find. Yeah. You have to search for these movies. And that to me is, it's worrisome and heartbreaking. And, you know, if it's, you know, like something like the TCM news that came out earlier last week. I mean, that was, and that's still up in the air. I don't think Warner Brothers has said one way or another what's happening there, but it's dubious to say the least. And if that goes, we're in for another world of hurt, you know. And then you have something like Criterion, who is keeping the fight going. Go Criterion. So
still waiting on that Coda release, by the way.
There's a few entities out there that are fighting the good fight, But in terms of film preservation, it is becoming much more of a challenge. And that does terrify me, because there's so like maintaining that history, I think, is important. And there's so many great films that define what our culture was throughout, the last century or so. Like, these films need to be accessible, and they need to be available, and they need to be in front of people's faces so they don't have to necessarily search for it, which is what they have to do right now. So, so as much as I appreciate what streaming is doing, they are equally making things a little scary, I think.
Especially with piracy as well. Like, I feel like streaming is really pushing towards piracy. I like I said,
and that's it. Like, I mean, we joke about it, but like,
it's true.
Like, a lot of those pirate sites are doing the Lord's work right now, because if not for them Jack Sparrowing them, we might not have those. I mean, if you want to watch Crater, you have to sail the Black Seas. That's what you got to do.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because as a kid, like, I would watch a lot of TV. Like, I would watch Turner Classic Movies. I would watch Boomerang. And like, that's how I learned about film. That's how I got into movies.
For sure.
It's just because random black and white movies on Turner Classic Movies. And I am listening to them explain what the movie's about and the history of it. And then the movie starts playing. I'm just like, I never knew who Audrey Hepburn was until Turner Classic Movies told me. And it's one thing to just have them on the platform, right? Like, that's great. But like you said, they're not showing up in the algorithm, because if you watch Venom, it's going to start giving you superhero movies and superhero shows. It's not going. It's not going to say, "Hey, you might like this other thing from the 1970s," And so you're kind of just existing. Like, you don't get to broaden your horizons when it comes to this art form. It's very frustrating. And they're only going to preserve, the Oscar winners. Like, Casablanca is going to be okay, but those smaller films from the 40s, 50s, 60s, they're going to just be lost to time, and that's tragic.
Especially foreign cinema. And that's a tragedy.
It's true.
Yeah, it is insane. Amanda, what are your takes or thoughts on this?
I mean, I agree with every single thing that's been said. I mean, the streaming platforms, they have given chances to so many young directors and writers, and that's such a great thing. But yeah, I'm more of like where the physical media is going. I also have a theory that we are going to go back to cable. Like, there's going to be so many streaming services, because I already saw something about like Stack TV. It's being televised here, and there are multiple streaming services packaged together, and it's called Stack TV. So I'm like, so cable, you guys are reinventing cable. I'm like, what are you doing? That doesn't make any sense. I'm like, just because you have an Apple TV, right? If you purchase an Apple TV, you have all the streaming platforms hypothetically in like one area, but that's also like freaking cable. Like, I'm just not understanding why they're really stretching this out.
Internet cable. Yeah,
it's internet cable. But I'm like, at one point, I'm telling you, there's going to be too much. It's going to be overload. They're going to start bunching things, and it's going to go back to cable within, I'm going to literally say, 5 to 10 years. I really do think that this is a cycle, because it's going to start piling up, and it's not going to make sense. It's not going to make sense. People like the streaming services, to pay for each of them, you're spending enough that you would spend for cable with movie channels added. And I've done the calculations. My dad and I have sat here multiple times trying to go over it, and it doesn't make sense to us, because it's the same thing. But it is the physical media that worries so many people. So that, I don't know. I think that eventually something's got to give. Something has to change for it to just get better. And hopefully it does get better for everyone. So I just think that, with the WGA on strike, SAG possibly, I think in the next couple of days could go on strike. Things need to change so it can just be better. Even like budget wise, like we said before, like people aren't making like movies for $50 million anymore like that. So it's just, I think things have to rise and then automatically fall and then just plateau and
Yeah.
get back to a reasonable amount of money and a reasonable amount of like channels for people to watch. So it makes
Sanity.
sense.
Yeah.
In addition to the streaming stuff, I kind of wonder, to your point, Amanda, about the cycles of this. I kind of wonder if Hollywood is going to implode on itself because like a lot of these movies are like the production budgets of them are astronomical. It's insane. Like the discourse around Indiana Jones, you know, it opened at $150 million, which isn't great, but if not for its budget, that would have been a fine opening. But it was made for $350 million, which is, and that doesn't even include marketing. And you contrast that to Raiders of the Lost Ark, which, if you include inflation, was made for $60 million by today's money. So whatever the cost of that is, and I don't know, I've never been on one of these sets, but everything is getting to a point where it seems like it's just not feasible anymore. And when that happens, and then people aren't going to the theaters anymore as often for all the reasons we've talked about, it seems like Hollywood is they're heading in a direction where the only outcome is that it falls apart on itself.
Yeah.
It has to.
I agree. You know, it definitely does. And it's like, well, like physical media, it's like, I mean, when was the last time, like any like Marvel show, just in general, Star Wars show, none of that's coming to physical media because they want people to sign up for Disney Plus, and it's like that's all they care about. And like what Mike was saying, like for a lot of MCU shows, I also feel like it goes into, you know, some things you can watch something and be like, yeah, this probably would have been better as a movie, or this probably would have been better as a TV show. Like when I watched Crater today, I liked it just fine. I was like, wow, there's a lot here that they could have expanded on that would have made like a really good like TV show. But no, it was just a movie, which is fine, but there was a lot of potential lost there, like on the left on the floor. So it's insane how I literally had to go out of my way, and it's like, how else am I going to watch this movie? It's nowhere. Like, you know, I had to go, you know, to the dark corners of the internet to find this movie to watch it. It was actually pretty good quality, by the way, but also we're seeing like not cross contamination, but like, I guess Insecure, like HBO shows are not now coming to Netflix, which is odd.
Yeah, Netflix just held out. They said, we're going to wait for these other ones to crumble, and they're going to just come right back to us, and all their stuff is just going to go back to Netflix.
And I'm like, that's weird, because HBO, like, that's, you know, HBO shows should...
They fumbled.
I mean, it's HBO.
I think they fumbled hard.
Yeah.
And now you're going to see like all the HBO projects, like the big ones, start flocking to other. I'm telling you, they fumbled so hard with HBO. I'm worried because I love HBO. The whole reason I even have Crave here, because that's the sister of HBO here in Canada. It's like, it's just for the HBO shows. Like I watch Sex and the City religiously. I can't even talk. And I like The Sopranos, Game of Thrones. Like I'll watch those on loop. And like The Last of Us, obviously that just came out. And it's like, those are not, I'm telling you, it's gonna gone.
I'm so
yeah.
I don't know what's
it's gonna be scary.
No, it is. But let's just hop back for our last segment here, which is challenges and concerns. I'll kind of just open up the floor for anyone who wants to, you know, comment.
I feel like we've already.
I feel like we kind of jumped to that ship already.
We're concerned.
But, it could get way worse.
No, it could. Like I was saying, it's like, I mean, for a lot of these physical media, because I was asking Mike the other day, because I think I sent you the Succession complete series coming to DVD. It's weird because the first season of Succession is available on Blu-ray, and no other season has released on Blu-ray since. I'm like, why is it that The Last of Us is getting a Blu-ray and a 4K UHD season 1 complete series, but Succession is not? Like, arguably,
I can answer that for you.
Yeah.
It's Sony. Like PlayStation is why it's doing
That's true. That's true. That's true. Yeah.
They want to sell that juicy bundle for like $300 where you get The Last of Us Part 1, The Last of Us Part 2, and the Blu-ray box set.
They're smart.
Yeah.
Of course.
That is
makes
true.
a lot of sense.
Very
And
smart.
also, again, Sony's the only one that doesn't have their own streaming service. So like their stuff is a lot more coveted. That's why Spider-Man is such a lucrative property. It's not really streaming anywhere. You have to go to the theater to watch the Spider-Man movies.
Well, now it kind of sort of is now, like Disney Plus now, or at least here in the States, and they're like now starting to release them, and everyone like lost their minds. They're like, oh my gosh, I can finally watch Spectacular Spider-Man. Finally came to Disney Plus, even though it's only season 1.
I love that one.
So we need that Succession video game. When's that coming?
I mean, Telltale can probably make that happen, honestly. So
they probably could.
So let's do it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, I'm
it.
so afraid. It's like just the concerns. I agree with JD's. It's just, everything's going to implode on itself. And what Amanda was saying about how it's basically cable. The only thing that sets it apart from it being true cable is that you can cancel things anytime you want. But now we're also seeing where you can sign up for a year of Max, also known as HBO Max and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And it's like, oh, well, there's that, but it's still, I can see that happening because vinyl, for music has came back in such a big way. Not CDs, but vinyl definitely has. Yeah. And I can definitely see that happening within the TV realm because it just blew my mind. I got an email like, oh, Succession Complete Series. I was like, heck yeah, I'm going to request that. And it's like DVD. And I was like, I mean, there's nothing wrong with DVD copies, but it's like Blu-ray has been the standard for so long, whether it be standard Blu-ray or 4K Blu-ray. And like, if you listen to the show, I've done a lot of like home theater coverage as well. Some are better than most, but I was just like blown away. I was like, I guess people still buy DVDs. They're cheap.
It's cheap.
Very, very cheap. And I'm like, ugh, at least give me the Blu-ray. At least.
I think it's just a testament though, that these movie studios, they just couldn't keep up. Like everything moved so fast, they couldn't keep up. Yeah. And like, I don't think they realized why Netflix worked in those early days, right? Like Netflix had everything. It slowly incorporated original programming, but then they were all like, hey, that's lucrative. It's making money. We need to start doing our own thing. But by separating everything, like having the Warner Brothers stuff here and the Disney stuff here, and then the Netflix stuff here, it to quote Syndrome, once everyone's super, no one will be, right? Once there's a million streaming services, none of them are worth subscribing to because I want to watch The Last of Us on Max, but I also want to watch The Mandalorian. I've got to subscribe to 2 different things. And that's it's not going to make the same money, or it's not as lucrative as Netflix was in those early days. And they all kind of jumped the gun, which is why I keep going back to Sony not doing that is the smartest thing they ever did.
That's my team.
That's right. That's true.
And that's well, and sorry to butt in real fast, but that is such a fascinating point because when you look at the Hollywood movies we've seen over the last, we'll say 5-8 years or so, and because they're rushing to try to keep up with that pace that you're talking about, I mean, look at the quality and how that is diminished, and all the visual effects artists that are complaining about, what the arduousness that goes into making these movies. And it's fascinating. When was the last time you guys saw the Pirates of the Caribbean movies? I asked that when specifically. It first came out. I asked that specifically because you watch those movies now, and the visual effects on those films, like Davy Jones, is freaking phenomenal. It is so good, and that was 20 years ago. And you watch a lot of the CGI soup we get now, and it's garbage. It's hollow nonsense.
Just look at Iron Man, right? The first Iron Man looks so great.
Another great example.
And then look at his suit in Endgame. It's not nearly as good.
Not the same.
True.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if I offended you there, Amanda, when I said the last time I saw them was in theaters.
That's a
long time, fam. Like
it is. I mean, heck, the last time I watched Indiana Jones before the new one,
Don't say 85.
That was VHS. VHS. Yes, sir. Well, not 85.
Yeah. You didn't watch them during COVID when everyone else did? Come on, Christian.
No, I don't know what I was doing during COVID. I can't even remember.
Not watching those, and you should because they're awesome.
No, I need to go back and rewatch them. But
anyway, my point is like effects from 20 years ago are astounding compared to a lot of the stuff we get today. It's gone backwards, and I think it's a direct result of what Mike was talking about. Hollywood is trying to keep up with streaming in their favor. Miserably.
And it's funny. Sorry, go ahead.
No, sorry. I was just going to add, like, Marvel is that example, right? Because Marvel was the crown jewel of theaters. Like, every movie was going to make close to $1 billion for like 7 years straight, right? After the first Avengers movie came out. But then Disney, again, didn't know what they were doing. They rushed into streaming. They announced all these Disney Plus Marvel shows, and then that diluted the brand. Not only were there so many things for people to keep up with, the quality, like JD was saying, dipped. And so by the time you get to Secret Invasion, I think they said that was the lowest viewed Marvel show because
I don't know why. It's amazing.
Even if it's good though, like the audience at this point is like, hey, I don't need to watch all of these anymore. I can't keep up anymore because
that's true.
We oversaturated the market.
Yeah. It's funny how, like, streaming originally was meant for people. We've been talking about this whole entire time. We're definitely, winding down here. Streaming was originally meant to watch television ad free. Like that was the beauty of streaming, is that you can subscribe to a service and watch your favorite television shows and movies ad free. That has gone out the window. Like, it's crazy because now, Netflix started adding, we're going to do an ad free tier and an ad tier. And I'm like, that right there completely contradicts the entire philosophy of why streaming worked so well in its early days. And it blows my mind how, I don't even know how we got here where, Disney Plus has their, has their own ad and ad free. Everyone has like their own ad and ad free tier now. And I'm like, how did we get here so fast?
It's because they're not making money. They need the monetization.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, there's monetization, but you would think, they keep hiking up these streaming service prices. It's like, okay, if you're going to it doesn't make sense for them to charge or like play ads and hike up the streaming service prices per month. It's like, I feel like it needs to be one or the other. If you're already hiking up the streaming service prices per month, why is there also a need to add the ad tier as well? I'm not sure if I'm making any sense there.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. They're caught in that loop though. Like, say The Mandalorian costs $100 million for a season, right? Yeah. They're not going to make that money back off of the monthly subscription services because people will sub to watch the show. They'll unsub once the show is over. And that's not actually income, if that makes sense. Because like if I have a standing subscription with Disney, like I think I have the yearly package, which is like $80 or whatever a year. That's just $80 they get from me. Whereas if it was a movie, I would go for every Star Wars movie they release. True. So by adding the ads, they're still making some sort of money off of me watching. They're not going to make any money no matter what they add to the service. My $80 are still going to be there. It's no increase, if that makes sense.
I got you. Yeah. No, I see what you mean. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, let's kind of wind down here. We kind of already talked about, the fourth segment there. So we're kind of just getting into our closing segments here. I wanted to thank each and every one of you for coming on and talking about this. I thought this was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun. I hope you guys did too. It's been a great conversation. I feel like we got all of our grievances out for the most part. A little cathartic. Yeah. It's just kind of like therapy for us when it comes to, streaming and Hollywood. We can all have like a sound conversation without the noise of like social media and Twitter. Hopefully Threads will not be the same, but we'll see. One can only hope. But I wanted to go around the table here and to to give you guys opportunities to let everyone know where to find you on the internet and what is coming up on your respective outlets. So we'll start with Amanda, and then we'll go to Mike, and then we'll close with JD.
Yeah, well, this was all like just a great discussion. It was so in depth. We covered everything, and it was a lot of fun with you guys. So you guys can always follow me over at AMX ND Reviews on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. You can check out my website, candidcinema.com, and my YouTube is Candid Cinema. And speaking of my YouTube, I have all my Mission Impossible reviews starting from 1 to 6. Up right now, and I have Dead Reckoning Part 1 tomorrow going up, so I'm really excited for that. And that's the extent of my reviews because I'm going to be taking a little break after, but yeah, that's all I have coming up.
All right, Mr. My gosh, JD.
We're going out of order.
Oh, I'm sorry,
right,
Mike. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mike. Yeah, I forgot to pull up the thing. I was like, wait, who was next? I'm like, oh my gosh. Mike, where can everyone find you? What's coming up on your outlet?
It's cool. Thank you for having me back. Always a pleasure talking with you all. This was a great conversation. You can find me at Novice Cinephile on YouTube and on Twitter, if that's still functioning over the next couple of weeks. On Threads, I'm the Novice Cinephile because that's also my Instagram because somebody sniped my name there. I don't know why. But very, very rude. I'm still not over it. You can also check out my podcast, The Chatter After. We do The Chatter After daily where we're talking movie news Mondays and Wednesdays. It's daily, but there's shorts every day. It's fine. Don't worry about it. And then there's The Chatter After proper. Again, I mentioned earlier we're doing Bahubali. We're also doing God of War Ragnarok. That's going to be coming out. That's a great game. Fantastic story. And I'm going to be out of town in a couple of weeks because I'm going to be at San Diego Comic-Con covering that for Collider.com. So make sure you stay tuned there for whatever comes out of Comic-Con. I don't know who's even going to be there at that point, but if somebody is there, I'll let you know.
All right, Mr. JD, where can everyone find you on the internet?
The easiest way to find us is insessionfilm.com. There you'll find a variety of content. We have written reviews. We got a wonderful staff of writers. For the podcast, recently, what did we do? We talked about Past Lives, Celine Song's breathtaking debut film. Love that. We have a review for Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. We just released our top 5 movies of the year so far. Our mid-year report episode just dropped, so you can go and check all that out. Coming up soon, we'll have a show dedicated to Mission Impossible, I believe is the plan. And you can find links again for all of that at insessionfilm.com. But we're on all of the usual podcast platforms and most recently YouTube. So you can find all of the shows there at youtube.com/InsessionFilm as well. And thanks, Christian, for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Of course. Anytime. Again, thank you guys so much for coming on. For all of our listeners out there, that does concludes today's episode. If you enjoy what you heard on today's episode, make sure to subscribe to our podcast on your preferred podcast platform of choice. And make sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads at Film Optix. That is Optix with an X. And don't forget to share an episode of our podcast with a fellow movie lover, whether it's your mother, your brother, or your significant other. Spread the love of the Film Optix podcast with a movie lover in need. And really quick, what's coming up next for us and what you can listen to now. You can listen to our Indiana Jones and Dial of Destiny review, spoiler free, of course, and our Secret Invasions episode 1 and 2 review that Devin and I covered together, spoiler free. And of course, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is spoiler free as well for reviews that are out now. And you can also look forward to our Mission Impossible 7 Dead Reckoning Part 1 review, which will be dropping within the next few days. And I believe Amanda will be joining us for that. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And again, for all of our listeners out there, thank you for listening. If you enjoy the show, please take a moment to leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And stay connected with us, again, on Twitter, every single social media outlet out there for all the latest updates. I'm Christian. That was Mike, JD, and Amanda signing off. And remember, life is like a movie, so go out there and make it a blockbuster. We'll see you guys next time.